Hi, everyone. Welcome back to English 1302. My name is Joseph Fly, and we're still in week one. I want to take a few moments and kind of go over with you a little bit about the material that you'll be reviewing, both in videos and on PowerPoints for week one, because there's just a lot there. And so I want to take just a few moments and kind of highlight the important stuff for you, make sure that you're clear on what you need to know. All right. First of all, if you haven't done so yet, please take a few minutes, click around the course, look and see what all's there. If you've done Blackboard before, this will probably be second nature to you. But if you haven't used Blackboard, then it's going to take some exploring and maybe a tutorial or two. There's lots of good stuff on YouTube about how to use Blackboard. We are using Blackboard Ultra. I encourage you to remember that. Also, let me repeat something that I posted in the first video. When you have questions, and you should have questions, email them to me. Now, don't hit reply to something I've posted before, especially if it comes from do not reply at blackboard.com. It's always better if you'll create a new email, either from your personal account, your Hotmail, your Gmail, your whatever, or your SPC account. Don't forget you have access to your SPC email, and you should be checking that several times a week, if not every day. Just takes a second, and I encourage you to stay on top of the course that way. But anyway, email it to me, and in the subject line, put English 1302, and either put English 1302 online or put English 1302 151, 152, 156, whichever section of the course you're in. And then try to be specific with your questions. And lots of times I can answer those just yes or no. As I'm driving down the road doing 80 miles an hour, I'm answering student texts. So just kidding. But yeah, a good question can get a quick answer. Of course, you're welcome to call. You have my office phone number on your syllabus, top of the first page. Or if you happen to have a class in Lubbock at the downtown campus, I encourage you to drop by. I'm here 3:30 to 5:30, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and then Friday mornings if I'm not in a meeting. If you need to see me on Friday mornings for anything, just drop an email before you come out and make sure I'm here. Because again, they schedule a lot of meetings, a lot of stuff going on Friday mornings. I think they do that on purpose. Okay, so for this week, you need to know a little bit about the Greek Renaissance and Elizabethan drama. Drama is one of the fields of art. It's a type of art, and it started more than 3,000 years ago. Those Greeks, the people who lived on the island of Greece, were a highly intelligent and highly inventive group of people. And they created a lot of stuff, including a lot of areas of study. They invented history and philosophy and psychology. They didn't invent math, but they advanced math, and they invented drama. Now, in Greek drama, there were 12 men, no women, who stood in a semicircle facing the audience, and they sang the story. After a couple of hundred years, you got another bright and creative young man named Thespius, who had one character step out of line, say a few words, step back in. And then a second speaking character was added and a third. But we honor Thespius by calling all actors these days thespians. You may be familiar with that if you had drama or theater courses in high school. But yeah, Thespius is called the father of drama. Then, of course, the Romans conquered the Greeks, and they also subsumed all of their literature and their theater and their drama and stuff, all of their art. But then when the Roman Empire collapsed, it kind of all went away. It got forgotten or destroyed, or people were just too busy trying to stay alive to actually create lots of new art. And so drama for about 1,000 years was largely forgotten. We call that period the Dark Ages. Now, this occurred, of course, in Middle and Eastern Europe, England, France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, the Mediterranean area, all of that. The Middle Ages or the Dark Ages were just a period of time where people were just trying to survive, just trying to get by, and so didn't have the time or energy to create lots of new stuff. Then we have the Renaissance. Started in Italy. Lots of people like to say Florence, or yeah, which is good for me. Uh, but you just have this rebirth of learning. That's what the word Renaissance means. It means rebirth of learning. And so you get more people studying and more people doing creative activities like sculpture and painting and writing and drama. And drama is born anew. Now, most often, the church, the Roman Catholic Church, is credited with bringing drama back because they put Bible stories on the backs of horse-drawn carts, and they would drag these from village to village, put on little skits, Bible stories like Jonah and the whale, Noah's Ark, Adam and Eve, those sorts of things, in order to share the good news of the Bible, because most people simply couldn't read. So they told the stories in dramatic form, and that's another thing that kind of helped with the rebirth of drama. All right, and so we're going along then. That's about, I think is that 1472, 1492? Yeah, late 1400s. Then Shakespeare. Okay, now drama has already blossomed, and Shakespeare is born at a time when theater is very popular. Now it's very popular, but it's also looked down upon by certain segments of society, and so he has to kind of battle the authorities. At the same time, he's putting on these fantastically popular plays. Shakespeare wrote 37 plays in total. May have written 38. May have co-written another play, we just don't know, but 37 we know for sure. That's the number we're going to stick with. The amazing thing here, all of those plays were popular. Each one of his plays was a financial success. They're divided generally into three categories, depends on who you read, but histories, tragedies, and comedies. And of course, Macbeth, the play that we're reading this semester, is a tragedy. However, it was also a history play because it came out of a history book. The story of King Macbeth came out of a history book called Hollingshead Chronicles. And so it's kind of historical in that sense because there really was a King Duncan, there really was a King Macbeth. But Shakespeare took these characters, added more characters to the story, and then brought these characters to life. Not a dry, empty, boring history book, but really a magnificent story. And that was Shakespeare's genius, the ability to bring characters to life, literature. Okay, so the highlights of William Shakespeare's life. This is a tough one, and I really encourage you to watch that A&E biography of William Shakespeare. It's nice. It's a little old, but it's nicely done, and it's imaginative, and it'll hold your attention. It's a little long, but lots and lots of information there. So William Shakespeare was born in a small town called Stratford-upon-Avon. Really, the name of the town was Stratford, but it sat on a river called Avon, so they call it Stratford-upon-Avon. Growing up, he grew up in a wealthy family. His family had servants, and they were able to afford the taxes, which allowed him to go to school. So the family were pretty well off. And then when he's about 13 years old, his father loses all of his money through bad speculations, probably Bitcoin. And when his father loses his money, he can't pay the taxes that allow his son to go to school. So Shakespeare gets kicked out of school, not for behavior problems, not because he's not smart enough. It's just financial. His financial aid didn't come through. But he goes to work, and we know he helped his father for a little bit. His father was a glover and a tanner and a wool dealer and a moneylender, and he may have also worked for his brother, who was a candle maker. So he did a lot of tradesman's type jobs there for a little bit. Then he just vanishes. When he turns, well, no, I'm sorry. Before that, he gets married. I won't say he falls in love, but we do know he gets married. He met a girl from a small town nearby whose parents are pretty well off. That's nice. And her name is Anne Hathaway, not the actress. And they meet, and they do the thing that young people do, and she gets pregnant. They get married, and the baby is born 6 months later, Susanna. Then 3 years later, they have twins, Hamnet and Judith. Hamnet, sadly, the son dies. I think he's about when he's 11. Yeah, dies of the plague. But before that, Shakespeare vanishes. For a period of about 10 years, he's just gone. He's off the grid, and we have no idea where he's at or what he's doing. Scholars don't like to say we don't know. So most often we try to pull out the most logical reason, the most logical thing that could have happened to him. And so a lot of people look at that 10-year period, which is called the lost years, and they say, well, maybe he was in the military, maybe he was traveling, maybe he was in prison, maybe he was a schoolmaster. But we just really don't know. We do know that at the end of that 10-year period, he came back and he's writing these plays. He never really published his own plays. He kind of thought of them as a one-off. He would write them, make copies for his actors, but he didn't recopy the whole play, of course. He just recopied their parts for them, and they had to learn their lines. And then he pretty much set them aside or tossed them. Now, luckily, other people kept them and published them after his death, or we wouldn't have them at all. But yeah, to him, they weren't great moments in literature. He would be really surprised to learn that we still study his plays, and we study them as works of great literature, which they are. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure which camera's on, so I keep looking at, I've got two different cameras here, and I'm not sure where to look. We'll focus on this one for a little while. Anyway, so Shakespeare writes 37 plays. They're really, really great plays, divided into different categories. We'll be studying Macbeth. Read it. You got to read it. I know you're going to watch the videos, you're going to read the summaries, you're going to look at the cliff notes. I chose the shortest play on purpose. This is Shakespeare's shortest play. It also has fewer characters than most of his plays, and it moves really quick. Things happen in quick succession. There's not any periods of long, drawn-out droughts where nothing happens. I mean, stuff is always happening in the play. Somebody's always dying. It is a tragedy. By the way, tragedy comes from the Greek word goat song, if you want to go back to the Greek. And tragedy is not defined by death or sadness. It's defined by character movement. And so you have the main character, the protagonist. Be sure you read that, or be sure you take notes on that PowerPoint called Elements of Drama, because it's got the vocabulary on there. And one of the vocabulary words is protagonist. So who's the protagonist of Macbeth? That's right, Macbeth. King Macbeth, or Thane Macbeth, Thane of Glamis, is the main character. And his character starts off high, moves a little higher, then, of course, drops way down. Spoiler alert, he dies. But, yeah, it's a tragedy because of character movement, not because of the emotions. Anyway, read it, and I strongly encourage you. Now, I've given you lots of information, but you will really learn it best and enjoy it most if you will take notes as you read. Now, I'm not saying take dictation or recopy the play. I'm simply saying read a page or two and then summarize real briefly 2 or 3 sentences what happened. For example, Act 1, Scene 1. 3 witches meet. They start off the play by saying, when will we meet again? In a thunderstorm, when the battle's over. Let's go. And that's really all that happens in all of Act 1, Scene 1. And there's only 4 acts in Act 1, I think, and there's only 5 acts altogether, and it's really entertaining. Now, can you watch a video after you've read the play? Absolutely. This was written to be acted out. This was meant for people to move around, and stage directions are included, and it was meant to be seen and dialogued and all that kind of stuff. It really was not written to be studied. But our theater department won't put on Macbeth every single semester, so we have to study it as is. I do encourage you, though, if you get the opportunity to read the play, then watch a video, and there are a lot of good videos out there. I would not encourage you to go with one of the more modern ones, one of the older ones from the 40s or 50s, maybe the 70s. 60s tend to be a little experimental, but yeah, there's lots of good versions out there. Just look for one that tends to follow the play closely, and it will help you to visualize what's going on as the characters interact with each other. Okay, so we're doing Act 1, Scene 1 this week. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I take that back. This week, week one of the semester, all we're doing is the life and times of William Shakespeare and Greek and the history of drama. Next week, we start the play Macbeth. And so for week two, you'll need to read Act One. Read it and take notes. You'll need to learn it. You'll need to experience it, enjoy it, grow from it. We'll have our first quiz at the end of week 4 once we finish Macbeth, and you'll get your first research paper assignment next week. I'll post that up for you, and I hope you'll have a good semester. Drop me an email if you have questions, and we'll talk some more later.